Good evening, Ashwin. So good evening to the one I don't know who the name has not been given. So hope everyone is going good. People able to hear me? Is it fine? Good evening, Amshi. Good evening. All right. Good evening, Satya. Good evening. Good evening, Chandramohan. All right. So where did we stop? Like, please do tell me like where did we stop exactly? Good evening, Karthik, Prashant, everyone. Good evening. So what about we stopped at some other doctrine, right? Okay, we discussed about Cobra also. Fine, fine. Okay. So I'll just recap. So what we have seen last class is uh, the why of Naxalism, right? So we have seen the how of Naxalism. So last class, so we have seen all these aspects. So last class, I guess we start the who of Naxals. Who is the social base? We have seen from the class perspective, caste perspective. A few people can come online if you wish to. We completed completely. We completed. No, we stopped till some other doctrine, right? I request any one of you to come online, please. You can switch on the video so that I'll get to know the pace. Okay, fine. So that is what like we started with those things. The who of Naxals, what is the social base we have seen, and then like the 5Ds we saw, and thereafter like we saw then the I guess we must have seen the why of Naxalism, the pre-independence, post-independent legislations, Forest Act, Zamindari system, Indian Land Acquisition Act, and what is the problem between right to property and the land legislation, land reforms related to tenancy reforms, all those things we must have seen, and why land reforms is a failure, what are the reasons for the growth and expansion, the political neglect, mainly how it has led to misery, insensitive administration also, and the case of Maoist dynamics of Maoist insurgency doctrine, starting from violence, then mass mobilization, front organizations by intellectuals, as well as the strategic front, all those things, the concept of urban naxalism, all these things we have seen. I guess we have stopped with the measures actually. So then measures, I said it's basically a security plus approach actually, security plus development approach. So security to securing the people and also to use of force, but use of force alone not. We spoke about the strengthening the use of forces as well as the development measures. And in the use of force, I said use of force sometimes it may be successful, sometimes it may be failure. The case of operation steeplechase versus operation the Salvajurum case, all right, we have seen that. And next we saw the strengthening of the forces, like security related expenditure scheme, the Samadhan doctrine, all these things, fortification of police station scheme, battalion scheme, and all right, fine, that is what. And so that is what we have seen. Now what we'll do, so is there any doubt, like first of all I should ask, like any doubts related to that? Can we go ahead, can we go ahead with the next one? Okay, so basically what it is kind of like, if you on the outset, if you see that, like what are the issues we saw, it should be like so I'll just so first of all, like I said, no, negotiations is not on the cards. Negotiations, I said it's no. Then we started with security, and the security, then it is about we have to see the legal, the constitutional measures, is it not, and the developmental and the governance, political, and the role of civil society, is it not, role of civil society, this is what we are supposed to see. All right, so I guess we have seen these two things, negotiations, and so we have seen negotiations and security. So I said negotiations the kind of mark only. So negotiations, it's a failure only. So negotiations not on the cards. This is what, right? Okay, fine. So we'll see the other things right now. We'll see that, like, okay, we'll start with the legal measures right now today. So basically on the outline, what we have seen is, so it's basically a kind of all these factors put together, so we call it a security plus development approach, right? What does that security plus development mean? So here what we're going to focus is, so security, all right, so again all in the same plane, all in the same plane only, but I'm writing it here for the space. Security plus development plus ensuring the rights of affected community, ensuring the rights of affected communities. Here it is, especially we have that is focusing on STs. All right, affected communities means mostly it is the Adivasis, and you have to speak about governance, promoting good governance, is it not? And also, last thing, we have to improvise the public perception management. All right, so I'll bit write here, change the public perception management or change. So you can say like these also. This is, you can say, holistically speaking, this is what. Holistically speaking, this is what we are supposed to do. All right, holistically speaking, we are supposed to do. Excuse me. All right. Okay. Hi, Paul. All right, fine. So this is what, holistically speaking, this is what our thing like focus on. Like everything has to have got to have proceeded hand to hand. Sorry. All right, security, development. So development, it's not like focused on those people who have already affected, especially Adivasis. You have to speak about governance, and that is what I've done it separately. Fine. So we'll see right now what exactly is the legal measures. Okay, so we'll see the legal measures right now. Right on the legal measures. What are the legal measures? What are the legislative measures? What are the legislative measures? See, in the legislative measures, we're going to focus on two things. In the legislative measure, we're going to focus on two things. One is one set of legislations which is kind of speaking about one set of legislation which is speaking about prohibition. All right, so basically what, which prohibits discrimination, and exploitation. So one side, so those legislations which prohibits discrimination and exploitation. On the other side, that is legislation which are ensuring the rights, which provides rights. So both have to have go hand in hand. Both has to go hand in hand. So an example for legislations which is prohibiting discrimination, one such act is, I'll write it in short, I'm not writing the entire thing, I'm writing in short. This one, the example for this one is, you can say SCST, Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. So I'm writing it short. All right, we can I'll after this one, like I explain that. And the second is act related to manual scavenging. Manual Scavenging Prohibition Act of 2013. Manual Scavenging Prohibition and Rehabilitation Act of 2013. These two examples here. Here the examples, one is LARR Act of 2013. I'll explain that. What is LARR means? Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act. Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation, Resettlement Act of 2013, which we're going to deal quite in explanation, like quite in detail, because it's very important. See, these schemes, these legislations which you're going to discuss, it will be very helpful in the mains, in prelims also to an extent, but mostly in mains and most in interview. In interview, that is directly or indirectly, They ask questions where you can apply these things. Okay, Land Acquisition Act 2013. And the second is we'll be discussing about the PESA. PESA means Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas. I'll explain, don't worry. Panchayat Extension to Schedule, you just write out PESA. And third is the Forest Rights Act, FRA Act of 2006. So these three legislations will be dealing in detail. These three legislations will be dealing in detail. Those two legislations, just basic things only. We are not going to discuss much, but here it is. So basically, legislative measures. So as to prevent, actually, the aim of this legislative measure is, so for the past injustices, you have to do some reparation, restitution of rights. And also you have to prevent that. I guess you must have remembered two factors, right? So you must have remembered these two factors, right? Is it not like, so basically, two reasons why it has kind of created troubles. It is something like, you see, the society, we spoke about exploitation, discrimination, right? All right, so that is the reason why it's about prohibiting discrimination. And here it is, so rights which are taken away, you're providing it. Understand these things. So that is the reason why prohibiting. So one hand, you're prohibiting further discrimination. On the other side, you're providing the rights which are already taken by the states. Understand? Fine. This is what basic outline. So I'll just give you like what exactly these things are, but these are the most important. These are the most important. This you can study as a part of current affairs already, but here these are the more specific things. These are very generic things. These are very specific things. But I'll speak about the generic things first. What about the legislations which prohibit discrimination and exploitation? We'll start with SC/ST Act. So what is this SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act? What is the first one? SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. The Scheduled Tribes and Scheduled Caste Prevention of Atrocities. Prevention of Atrocities Act, 1989. This legislation is nothing but, you see, previously this legislation was in the form of at the timing, you see, it's all started with Article 17 of the Constitution. Article 17 of the Constitution speaks about what? Abolition of untouchability. Is it not? It speaks about what? Abolition of untouchability. So say that like untouchability is abolished and anyone who is practicing will be punished based on the law. So in order to give effect to this one only, in order to give effect to this provision only, it started with the legislation which is called as what? The Untouchability Offences Act. So first of all, it started with the Untouchability Offences Act 1955. All right. So it started with this untouchability offences. They listed down what are the cases, what are the scenarios of untouchability, and they provided penal punishment for those who practicing that. And later on, and it was renamed and included as Protection of Civil Rights Act. It's known as what? The Protection of Civil Rights Act. The Protection of Civil Rights Act of 1976. But again, they found this to be inadequate. They found this to be inadequate to prosecute those persons who are kind of involved in such a discriminatory practices of untouchability, and that is the reason why by the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act, they have included a larger definition, lot of offences. So they have consolidated with the time, like they have included a lot of things, lot of offences under this one. So today we have a kind of a comprehensive legislation to punish those persons who are involved in untouchability. Like, okay, there are instances garlanding those people with scheduled caste people with, you can say, in terms of derogatory thing, like you must have seen, like, I don't know how to give the examples. You must have seen a lot of things which happens in the countryside, rural side and all. Fine. So this is what but we are not going to discuss in detail, as I said. Like we will be having like based on the current affairs, we'll have a discussion on this one. All right. So just know about this one. This is one such legislation which is very important. Whenever comes in the newspaper, please go through that. We'll have a separate session based on the current affairs. All right, because if we start discussing, it's not so required because you can't write more in the answers. You can study more in the society also, this part. Fine. The next one is, the next legislation is manual scavenging. The next legislation is related to manual scavenging. The act, the legislation name is Prohibition of Employment of employment as manual scavengers. As manual scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act. And their Rehabilitation Act. (2013) and the Rehabilitation Act 2013. Yeah, mostly those provisions were taken. Like today, this is effective. This is effective. 2019 or 1918 Act is there. So it's kind of combination only. Fine. So it is right now we have what? The Prohibition of Employment and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013. AC on manakku. Fine. So this is what. So basically, what like these are things like what exactly is. So there was an act in 1993, but that Manual Scavenging Act was related to what? It was focusing on the prevention aspect, but right now it is focusing on not just prevention, even the aspect of rehabilitation. So the previous legislation which was there in 1993, it was not there. It was not focusing on the rehabilitation aspect, but here it focused on the rehabilitation of their family as such. Fine. So what is the basis on which this act is done? If you look into the preamble of it, so they would have mentioned about the preamble of the Constitution, because preamble of the Constitution speaks about what? The dignity, is it not? Preamble of the Constitution speaks about fraternity, is it not? So that is the basis. This is a law which promotes dignity, which promotes fraternity. All right. In addition to that, the other basis of this law is Article 21. You know, Article 21 is the most widest interpreter of the Constitution. It's just 2 sentences. All right, 2 sentences, right? But the thing is that the state shall not take away your life and personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. Just 2, maybe 1 sentence only. But the thing is that the hidden meaning is that right to life includes a lot of things. Right to environment, right to education, is it not? Right to pollution-free environment. So many things I can discuss. But the thing is that one of the very important facets of right to life is includes right to live with dignity. Right to live with dignity, is it not? So that is the reason why court often has said that like it is not about a mere animal existence. It's not about mere animal existence of your life, but to remain with dignity. To remain with dignity. That is what. Fine. So this is another aspect. And one important thing is Article 46. Article 46 of the Constitution, one of the directive principles says that the state shall protect the weaker sections, is it not? So it is basically protect and safeguard the weaker sections of the society. That includes the scheduled caste also, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes also. பாருங்க ஓடுதான் பாருங்க வர மாதிரி தெரியல பாருங்க ஈஸி வருதான்னு பாருங்க இல்லாட்டி திருப்பி வைங்க எப்படி. All right, so this is what basically is. So based on this only, what the prohibition of employment as well as the rehabilitation was made. Fine. So please do note these things. These are just whenever it appears in the newspapers, because every year there used to be an article, because you started reading newspapers, every year there used to be an article in Hindu related to these things. Please go through that. All right. And we'll also discuss whenever it is necessary. It's fine. These are the two things you have to focus on. Now we'll come to the specific, which is most important. So the most important which we're going to see is, we'll start from the Land Acquisition Act. So what are those rights which are providing rights? What are those legislations which are providing rights? All right, we'll start with LARR Act. We'll start with LARR Act. Now, what is this LARR Act? What is this LARR Act? Okay. LARR Act. So, LARR Act actually, write down. The full form is Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation Resettlement Act. The full act name is Right to Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act. Right to fair compensation. In fact, I forgot this. The right to fair compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act. In short, it is called as LARR Act. This is one of the important piece of legislation, a very important legislation, because you see, this act was basically created to bring justices to the past injustices. Like, what are these things? We spoke about the Land Acquisition Act, no? Land Acquisition Act of 1894. So, in order to bring justice to those things, so those people who have been denied of all those rights, no? So, in order to do justice to that only, so Land Acquisition Act of 1894, it did not have such provisions so as to do justify to the landowners. Land were taken without giving proper compensation, and that is the reason why there was a need to revamp, and that the exact thing outcome is the Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Resettlement Act. Now we'll see one by one what are the provisions in that act which has led to overcoming the shortcomings. All right, fine. So we'll start with the first one. What are the significant? So right now we are going to see the significant provisions in the bill. What are the significant provisions in the bill which has kind of made overcome the shortcomings of the previous act, 1894 Act. So first one, to start with it, the definition of affected families. I'm not going to discuss about all the significance of all the importance of the bill actually, but few just significant provisions. So first of all, we're going to discuss about the definition part actually, and the definition specifically about who is an affected family. Who is an affected families? You see, previously affected families, previously it included only those people who are kind of having land. All right. So here the key point is the affected families. It includes what? It includes not just the landowners, but also the livelihood losers. Meaning what? Previously it had to be this is what the previous things. But right now, as per the act, they have added this part also. Previously, they did not have landowners at all. Sorry, the livelihood losers one. See, for instance, take the case like, you see, when a kind of road is developed. So you are taking the land from the landowners. But what about those people who are dependent on that? What about those people who are dependent on that? See, the person who is having a land, definitely he'll get the compensation on the kind of documents he produces. Like, for instance, I have 2 acres, 3 acres, like for which, like if the land is acquired for development of a national highway, they would be giving compensation to me. They'll be giving compensation, a rehabilitation package every to me. But those people who depend on that land, for instance, I had 3 acres, means maybe 1 or 2 family might have depended on that, unskilled people. who are maybe daily wage laborers. I was employing them. Now I get compensation. I can buy money from that. But what about those people who are residing in that village who depend on me? So that is the reason why the affected families include not just the landowners, even the livelihood losers also. This is a major thing. Even the livelihood losers also need to be compensated. Understand? Fine. This is one thing. And the second one, the second important concept which you have to know is the concept of social impact assessment. The concept of social impact assessment. What is the meaning of social impact assessment? You must have heard about environmental impact assessment, right? So what is an effect of that project on the environment? That is what called as environmental impact assessment. So here they are going to find out the impact of this land acquisition on the society. So that is what it's not about the kind of land owners alone. So it's not just the land owners alone. Even those people who are dependents on it. Those people who are dependents, who dependent on that. So this is what this social impact assessment has to be carried out by the respective the government. Whoever notifies, no, they have to undertake it. Here the very important thing, there are three things which you have to keep in mind. As far as the social impact assessment, the number first is, first of all, they should be consulted. Is it so? Whenever social impact assessment is done, Gram Sabha should be consulted. Number one is, first of all, Gram Sabha should be consulted. Alright, Gram Sabha should be consulted, number one. And secondly, whatever the suggestions they are taking from the stakeholders, they should provide the summary. They should provide the summary of the social impact assessment along with the draft notification. Alright, so even before like you are taking back the land, officially no, they notify the land, right? This land is going to be acquired, so and so land is going to be acquired. Even before that, you have to conduct an assessment of the society, that is social impact assessment, and that assessment you have to compile, and the summary of which has to be attached with the draft notification. Attached to the draft notification number 2. And number 3 is, so especially when I speak about summary, it has to be released in the local language also, vernacular language also, not just in English. And point number 3 is, it should be available for public scrutiny. It should be available for public scrutiny. All right. So it should be open so that like everyone, they should kind of criticize that or combine that. Like what exactly is that, whatever the summary it is given, it is very true or not. So this is what the basic thing. So the second major thing with respect to this act is social impact assessment. So how the dependents as well as the landowners are affected. So this is the procedure they have to be followed. Understand? Along with EAA, SAA also. And the next point is related to compensation. The next point is related to compensation. So what exactly related to compensation means? Here I'm going to speak about the value of compensation. Guys, compensation is different from rehabilitation and resettlement package. The two packages, one is compensation package, outright money, you can say. And another is rehabilitation resettlement package, which is altogether different. As far as the compensation in terms of monetary value, the compensation provided is, here it is more mandatory. For instance, compensation in terms of, if it is a rural place, it is 2 times the market value. 2 times the market value. Whereas in the case of urban places, sorry, rural places, it's 4. I'm sorry people. Rural places, it is 4 times the market value. Here, urban places means if the land is acquired, it is 2 times the market value. It is 2 times the market value. So basically more compensation. So basically meaning what? More compensation. All right. The next important factor is about the consent actually. The next important thing is consent. So what is the meaning of consent actually? Here it is. So the next one is significant provision is related to consent. So what exactly the meaning of consent means? Like giving approval, right? So when a land is going to be acquired in a specific place for a public project, see all these things, first of all keep in mind, the government can acquire a land for public purposes only. The purposes has to be what? Public purposes. Ultimately they should show that this is kind of good for the larger good of the people as such. It is ultimately it is dedicated to the public, not just for private purposes. It's all for public purposes. Even the public purposes, there is three possibilities. There are three possibilities. Now, point number one is where the government acquires on its own. The government acquire something on its own for its own purposes. So government acquires land for its own purposes, for its own use for public purposes. So own means the hold and control remains with the government as such. Owning and control has to be with the government as such, but here it is, the consent factor is not so significant. It's enough they provided the compensation. But there is second scenario in which government acquires and transfer to private. Government acquires and transfer it to private, but that too for what? That too only for public purposes. In this case, the consent required is 80%. In this case, the consent required is what? 80%. So 80% of the total landowners, they should give consent for this project. 80% of the landowners should give consent for this project to be approved, for the land acquisition to be approved. And the third one is the same, the government acquires, but this is specifically for what? Government acquires, but this is basically for what? For a public-private partnership. For a public-private partnership. In this case, it is said that they need to get the consent of 70% of the landowners. All right. They should get the consent of the 70% of the landowners. Understand? So this is what basically. So in the case of PPP, it is 70%. If it is transferred to private for the public purposes, it is 80%. But in this case, first case, it's not specifically mentioned about 50% or anything like. But if they are provided proper compensation, that is fine. But definitely they should have the SIA, right? So during the times of SIA and other things, they'll get to know that consent factor and other things. All right. So nothing like that. You have to get the consent like this one. Understand? And next, another significant provision is that, like with respect to the requirement. The requirement regarding the, you can say agriculture or agricultural land. So what they say, in case of any public purposes, the agricultural land should be acquired as a last resort. Agricultural land should be what? Acquired as a last resort. So when other things are not possible, so it is said that, like whenever I speak about agricultural land, so here they are speaking about what? A multi-crop land as well as irrigated lands. these should be acquired as a last resort. These should be acquired as a last resort. All right. So I'll answer your doubts later on. So don't worry. These should be acquired as a last resort. All right. And the last important thing is, related to the retrospective operation. So what is the meaning of a retrospective operation means? This Land Acquisition Act of 2013, this will be applicable to those acquisitions which happened before the enactment. So for instance, the land acquisition happened in 2000 or 2005. Will it apply? Means it will apply with certain conditions. If till date, at the time of 2013, if the land acquisition has happened past, but they have not provided due compensation means, or if there is a problem means, still this will apply. This will apply. This is what called as what? Retrospective operation. So it had a retrospective operations. So which has been normally pending for more than 5 years. So they're given examples like if a project has been pending for 5 years. So need not go through everything. The project is pending for 5 years prior to that. So if the rehabilitation is not provided, so those projects also it will be there. So such is the significant. All right. So this is a very major significant legislation wherein, like you see, it is whatever it is. I said most of the land has been, especially the non-tribals, they have lost the land because of the Land Acquisition Act. So for them, it is a very important one. You see, like today, it's so much sounds good in the book, but again, unfortunately, it is also not properly utilized. Actually, this is my opinion. Fine. So this is what basically the Land Acquisition Act. So Land Acquisition Act has kind of, solved the issues that arise because of the Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Fine. This is what. Understood? This is about the Land Acquisition Act of 1894. And the next one, we are going to see the PESA Act. Next one, we are going to see PESA. So we have seen like this part, like land acquisition. Next, we are going to see the PESA Act. So what does PESA stands for? Write down. PESA stands for Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas. PESA stands for Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas. This is the 1996 Act. This Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, it was applicable. It's basically applicable to what does this schedule means? Schedule 5 areas. We'll discuss about Schedule 5 areas in a short while. It will be applicable to the Schedule 5 areas. It will be applicable to the Schedule 5 areas. All right. So at present we have some 10 states. So starting from Gujarat, you see till east. So most of the Naxal affected. Most of the Naxal affected states. It is covered. So what is basically what this 5th schedule areas, Panchayat Extension Schedule Areas means? See, when the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act was enacted, you see the provisions, they were not applied to the schedule areas. Why they were not applied to the schedule areas? Because there need to be some modifications. There need to be some modifications. You see, there are specific provisions related to panchayats in Constitution. Schedule 11 of the Constitution. Schedule 11 of the Constitution. It deals with those things, is it not? Schedule 11 of the Constitution, it deals with those subjects which are under panchayats. But if you see that, like those subjects which are left to the state to determine whether to give that to panchayat or not. But when in these PESA applicable, in the PESA applicable means like the scheduled areas where the PESA is applicable, they have a modified version. Meaning in the PESA states, what happens? Schedule 11 with apply with certain modifications. will be apply with what? Certain modifications. It will apply with what? Certain modifications. All right. So here are the, I said like some 29 functions are assigned. All right, they are assigned to the PRIs, but generally these are optional. These are optional in the other states, but in the PESA affected states, these are mandatory. In the PESA affected states, these are mandatory. Understand? In the PESA affected states, these are what? It's mandatory. So for instance, the example. So Panchayat, the structure, the powers in Tamil Nadu won't be similar to what it is there in Andhra Pradesh. What is there in Kerala won't be similar to what is there in Jharkhand. So the non-PESA versus PESA, that is what the differences are. Fine. So basically speaking about PESA, this PESA gives more powers to, I'll change the slide. PESA, it gives more powers to Gram Sabha. PESA empowers more powers to Gram Sabha. Now what is Gram Sabha? This question is so often asked. This question is so often asked in the interview. Define Gram Sabha. They asked in prelims also, they asked twice. See, Gram Sabha, if you want to know, you have to refer Article 243B. Article 243B defines what is Gram Sabha. So Gram Sabha means all registered. The key point is Gram Sabha means it is an assembly of all registered electors in a village panchayat. All right. If you know the exact words means, it's a body consisting of persons registered in electoral rolls relating to a village within the panchayat. In a shorter form, this is what? All registered electors in a village panchayat. So what is the meaning of which here? So normally in India, like who are persons who are eligible to vote, right? So it includes 18 plus people who are eligible to vote, meaning who are not disqualified for other reasons, plus people who are registered in the electoral roll of this panchayat. So registered in electoral roll of the specific panchayat. This is what mandate. So I can't, if at all I am in a specific village, if my vote is there in the voter list of a specific village, that I can participate in that Gram Sabha only. This is what you have to know, because this is most important. Please, when you read in the polity, just keep by hearted. This is a very important one. It's a very important one. They ask from a polity perspective also, from this also, mostly Gram Sabha. So PESA means Gram Sabha, more powers to Gram Sabha. PESA means what? More powers to Gram Sabha. So what are the powers? So for the sake of understanding, I'll like what exactly is the powers given? Powers are given with respect to development. Powers are with respect to management and owning of resources. Powers with respect to customary mode of dispute resolution. I'll write that. So what are the exactly powers given to these Gram Sabha? What are the powers given to Gram Sabha in the PESA areas? Here we are speaking about in PESA applicable areas. One is related to development related things, and second related to dispute resolution. Second related to, which color we can use? Okay, this related to dispute resolution. Dispute resolution. And the third one related to you can see management and owning of resources. Management and owning of resources. I guess that will be kind of little dark, so I'll write white in that. All right. So what exactly is this development actually? Development means, you see, the permission of Gram Sabha is mandatory in the following things. The permission of Gram Sabha is mandatory in the following things. For instance, take with respect to land acquisition. If any government is going to acquire land in this area, PESA related area, PESA applicable area, they have to get mandatory permission with respect to land acquisition. And similarly, I can give you more examples, like for instance, choosing the beneficiaries. So you have a lot of schemes under the central and the state, right? In order to choose the beneficiaries of the schemes, specifically, normally it is given in all other things, but here specifically, more importantly, they have the priority. The Gram Sabha has the priority. All right. So whatever the developmental activity, they can take it. Like any developmental activity in that region, it has to be done with the permission of Gram Sabha. That is what the meaning is. And what about the customary mode of dispute resolution? So the customary mode of dispute resolution means, in these PESA applicable areas, for small offences, these people, they have their own set of laws. So based on their customs, based on the traditions, based on the religious beliefs, so based on their religious beliefs, based on their traditional customs, that is what called as customary mode of dispute resolution mechanisms. A normal law won't be applicable there. But that is for smaller offences, not for larger offences like murder and all. For smaller offences, especially related to associated with the society, related to marriage, related to, that is, matrimonial disputes, related to other things, like in those cases, what will happen? They will be having their own customs and traditions, religious beliefs, right? So that will be decided. They will be adjudicating. Understand? Grama Nyayalayas. Fine, this is what. It's more like that only. So this is what. This is second thing. And the third is management and owning of resources. Management and owning of resources. What is the meaning of management and owning of resources? With respect to, say, minor forest produce. With respect to minor forest produce. So what is the meaning of minor forest produce? For the time being, you write, it is any non-timber forest produce. Any non-timber, whatever the tribal people, they are collecting from the forest, which is not a timber, like beetle leaves, or you can say tendu leaves, honey. All right. So they collect all those things from the bamboo. So whatever non-timber things, they are called as what? Minor forest produce. So anything with respect to minor forest produce, they have their own thing. Related to managing the village markets, management of village markets, and also you can add with respect to mining also. With respect to, you can say, with respect to giving license or lease, with respect to giving license or lease to minor minerals. With respect to what? Exploitation of minor minerals, not the major minerals, which comes under the Ministry of Mines. With respect to giving license and lease to the exploitation of minor minerals, in all these aspects, Gram Sabha is empowered with more powers. The Gram Sabha is empowered with more powers. Understand? So this is what So with respect to development, with respect to management, and also with respect to customary mode of dispute resolution also, with respect to customary mode of dispute resolution mechanisms. So all those things. So they have a kind of control over the legislative functions. They have the control over the executive functions as well as the judicial functions, few judicial functions. You can say it's that is the reason why you see PESA is not just alone. PESA is not just about development alone. It will bring development as well, plus to deepen democracy. To deepen democracy. So why I say deepens democracy means what? It enhances. So when I say it deepens democracy means it enhances people's participation. It enhances people's participation in decision making process, the grassroots level. People's participation in decision making processes. And what is the meaning of development here means? So to reduce, like, so the impact, like, it is basically what you can say, to reduce land alienation related things, to reduce alienation of tribal areas, because alienation we have seen very important factor, right? Alienation of tribal areas, and also to reduce poverty. Right, so this is what the aim is. So all these aspects. All right. So this is what basically development means, like reduction of poverty, and you can write about, like, because one more thing you can write it about immigration, out migration. People moving out of forest voluntarily also. You know, you see the tribals, they move out of forest in search of jobs and all, right? And so as to prevent that also. So reduce poverty as well as prevent out migration. So this is what the object which is kind of done. But I don't know, but how many of you know about the exact provisions, those people who are hailing from that actually? Because first of all, I said, like, there are a lot of laws which looks good in the books actually, but the reasons for the failure is that, like, we don't know. First of all, we are educated, we think ourselves educated, right? People like who are listening right now, but we ourselves first of all don't know the much of the rights which are available. So first of all, we are not utilizing the ones options which are before that, but we are still demanding for more rights. That is what. So we should be able to reach as a responsible citizen, as a future bureaucrats, you should be able to know, read, and then you have to try to implement that also. So please try to do that. That's my small request. Fine. So this is about the PESA things. This is about the PESA. Understand? And the next third important thing is about Forest Rights Act. The third important one is the Forest Rights Act. So what does this FRA Act, Forest Rights Act, means? Please write down. It is said, the actual right name is the Scheduled Tribes. The Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. The Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. Recognition of Rights Act. A Recognition of Rights Act. It's 2006 actually. The Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest recognition of rights act. Now, why this act is basically there? I said, no, people have been evicted from the forest. People have been evicted from the forest because of the Indian Forest Act. Is it not? People have been. So this is the impact, like why it is because of the Indian Forest Act of 1927, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. All these led to what? All these led to eviction of tribals from their land. All these led to eviction of tribals from the land. So in order to like prevent that, like to bring back them, see, one of the problem they had at, I said, most of the tribals, they have what is called as community ownership, is it not? Most of the tribals, they have what is known as community ownership. They don't have individual ownership. They don't have what? Individual ownership. Now, what is the meaning of this community ownership means? The best example is jumming cultivation or shifting cultivation. So why people indulge in shifting cultivation in the tribal areas? Because they move from one specific area to another area, and once the tree regrows, they come back, they kind of clear the forest, and then they'll use that as an, they will use that as what? As a fertile. Jumming cultivation, slash and burn cultivation. You see, most of the tribals, they are kind of used in grazing also. They go from pastures to pastures, from winter to summer, like you see in the Himalayas also. But here we are not concerned about Himalayas, but still speaking about it. The shifting cultivation, it denotes like mostly they have community ownership. They don't have individual ownership. Meaning what? A person in tribal, if at all, say for instance, I'm in a non-tribal area. For instance, like I have a land in the highways. So government is planning to expand that into a 4-lane or 8-lane. So if they kind of going to have it, they in the notification, they take my land and they'll give compensation. I have to prove that, right? That land belongs to me. Something called patta chitta is there, right? You have land record, basically. But these people, they don't have land records. These people what? They don't have land records. So ultimately the aim is what? Ultimately the aim is to recognize that rights. Ultimately the aim is to recognize them. All right, please write down. Please write down. Please write down. The Forest Rights Act recognize. The Forest Rights Act recognize and vest the forest rights. Recognize and vest the forest rights and occupation in forest land and occupation in forest land, occupation in forest land in forest dwelling scheduled tribes, in forest dwelling scheduled tribes, other traditional forest dwellers, in forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers who have been residing in such forest, for generations, but whose rights could not be recorded. But whose rights could not be recorded. But whose rights could not be recorded. I repeat, the Forest Right Act recognizes and vests the forest rights and occupation in forest land in forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers who have been residing in such forests for generations, but whose land rights could not be recorded. So basically what? So they recognize by giving the title deeds. So they recognize that. So based on like you are able to prove that like you are part of that, like so you are kind of providing a lot. So it's basically what? Allotment of title deeds to those people, those scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. Fine, this is what, this is an again very important. See, if these legislations, see often in news actually, last year also it was in news actually, because like you see a lot of tribal people have been like not given such rights. All right, but that is again a problem. There is a kind of balance. You see, first of all, you so many people, they used to get um the title deeds from the specific tribal people groups as individually, and then they use it for mostly for tourism and developing some agriculture. All right, so the large, can say, the corporates, also companies also, because I don't want to speak about corporates alone. Corporates, small companies, even small other individuals also, they used to get the land rights through the tribals, and they used to again get back, and then they used to use it for tourism and other purposes. All right, so there is a lot of misuse also. Fine. So this is what, so all three legislations, be it PESA, be it Land Acquisition Act, as well as this FRA Act, it's most important. It's most important. So I just given you the gist only, as much as I have covered, but you have to follow in the newspapers whenever it comes. All right, all three things very most important, which provides rights. Fine. And the next one we are going to see about the constitutional measures. The next one we are going to deal about the constitutional measures. So what about the constitutional mechanisms we have? So number 4 is, what about the constitutional measures? So with respect to the constitutional measures, actually, I'm going to deal about two things. One is general provisions related to. So who are the people who are affected? It is mostly the Adivasis, right? So here I'm going to speak about two factors. One is those provisions generally applicable to SCs, and those provisions which are specifically apply to the scheduled areas. So these are the two things which we have to focus on. Whenever we are speaking about rights, they are kind of mandating from, like, it's kind of coming majorly out of, one is human rights, and those rights which are formed in the form of fundamental rights. All right, as far as the Indian Constitution, like, most of the human rights are kind of incorporated in the fundamental rights. So what are basically those rights which are for the betterment, advancement of the scheduled tribes? Because discrimination is one of the factors that which has led to Naxalism, right? So by restoring their rights through constitution, there are so many things can happen. All right, so I'll just name these provisions. Here we'll discuss detail about the specific provisions, but general provisions you can study in two. One is from polity can study, and another is from society. In society, they'll be discussing about scheduled tribes, and one more thing is related to polity. Fine, but I'll mention what are those provisions which are you have to refer. These provisions, it is good if you by heart it. It is good if you by hearted, because this will be, they will be asking that, because any provisions related to scheduled tribes, women, transgenders. All right, so these are very important, and SC is also next. All right, so this is what, so on this order it is very important. So we'll see what are those things which are generally applicable. What are the things which are generally applicable to the scheduled tribes? So now you can I'll give you option, like, okay, a lot of doubts. Now tell me, what are those provisions which are applicable generally to the thing? All right, whatever it is missed, I'll tell you people, like, the slides I'll tell you, I'll show it later. So can you text me the generally applicable provisions, starting from first? Provisions in the constitution which is generally applicable to the scheduled tribes. Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 is specific, I said, no? It's very specific, people. It's not just very generic. It's very specific to Naxal affected areas. Okay, Article 17, okay, fine. Article 15, okay, fine. But why don't you start with the first ones? Like, people straight away start with. What about preamble? There is nothing, huh? Okay, Article 46, which I've already mentioned. All right, good. All right, okay, we'll start with it. First of all, start with the preamble. Why not start with the preamble, people? All right. So what are the general provisions which you have to focus is, number one, focus on preamble. It's a preamble which speaks about fraternity, dignity, rights of socio-political, economic justice. This is not equality. It speaks about equality. Please do by heart. Preamble, we the people of India having sovereign resolved to constitute India into a sovereign socialist, all these things. So when I started by hearting as a lawyer, then as a UPSC aspirant also, you have to by heart. Please by heart it. Please by heart. It's very important. Preamble, you have to by heart it. And in preamble, they have mentioned about the dignity and fraternity also. Preamble, they mention about equality also. Justice of social, economic, political also. This is one thing. Understand? And next is about the definitions part. Next is about the definitions. The definitions of SC/ST. So for which you have to refer Article 342 and Article 366. Article 366, 25 or 24, something like that. All right. So if I'm wrong, just please do rectify that for the definition part. And apart from that, when you discuss about the provisions related to economy, provisions related to education, provisions related to employment, that is where you said, no, people, Article 15, Article 16, is it not? Article 15, Article 16, Article 19 also. You see 19, they restrict the movement, right? Article 19(1), you have a freedom of movement and residence, but in the interest of public, they can prevent that, right? So that's what exceptions are given. Article 46. All right. So Article 46 can mention about Article 39 B and C also. Even though they did not mention about scheduled tribes, it's about speaking about equality, right? Again, Article 14 also is a part of this equality. You can include Article 14 also. Equal protection of laws. Treat the like people alike. Treat the like people alike. You can include that also. Understand? Fine. All right. So you can include that also. I forgot that, sorry. Equality. All right. And with respect to the political rights, you have reservations for scheduled tribes in parliament, you have reservations for scheduled tribe in assembly, you have reservations for scheduled tribes in panchayats also. All right. So Article 330, 332, 330, 332, 334, and also Article 243D and 243T. All right. All right. So this is about for MPs, this is for legislative assemblies, this is the time limit actually for reservations, this is for panchayats, this is for municipalities, this is T, this is for municipalities. All right. So in addition to that, like you have 338A also. So National Commission for STs, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes also. So all these things, so all these provisions, it's very much mandatory. Please go through that. Please go through that. Mostly they ask in interview and also in paper 1 also, paper 2 also, paper 3 also. Paper 3 indirectly they used to ask. Paper 1 and 2 they used to ask, like once they asked about like I guess in 2016 or 17, I guess, when I was writing, like so they asked like what are the special provisions related to scheduled tribes in the constitution. Very straightforward question. All right, so fine. So this is what. So please do go through that. Like, so we are not discussing that, but please do go through that, these provisions. All right. Okay, next one. So next one is we're going to discuss about like other things. What are the things which are specifically applicable? What are the provisions which are specifically applicable. Under specifically applicable provisions, it is Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 of the Constitution. The specifically applicable provisions are Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 of the Constitution. These are the majorly to the Naxal affected, but all right. But here is the difference. Here is the difference. You have to know that Schedule 5 versus Schedule 6. All right. So we'll discuss this in detail, but as of now, just keep this in mind. We'll discuss this after completing the this one. What I say? I mean, the Northeast insurgency. So in the meantime, because we'll be studying a lot of things about it. So here, two major provisions which you're going to see, which is one is Schedule 5 of the Constitution and Schedule 6 of the Constitution. I'll just give you one difference, after which, like after going through the entire Northeast, like we'll be giving this, because Northeast insurgency and Maoist insurgency, there are more similarities, more differences also. So we'll have a comparative study in the measures. So Schedule 5 of the Constitution, it is basically, you have to read with Article 244(1). Whereas Schedule 6 of the Constitution, it is Article 244 Clause 2. Now, what exactly these things are? When spoken about this is applicable. Schedule 5, Schedule 6 is applicable to 4 states. It is applicable to 4 states, that is Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. All right. It's basically for the sake of remembrance. You can remember ATM and M. So you can say that like there is no Manipur in ATM. Always people will confuse like whether it is Mizoram or Manipur. So for the sake of your remembrance, you can say there is no Manipur in ATM. No money in ATM basically. All right. So here the areas which are applicable is except this Schedule 6 areas, except the Schedule 6 areas, that is Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Other areas which has significant tribal population, they are under Schedule 5. They are under Schedule 5. So we have already seen is PESA applicable to the Schedule 5 areas. So similarly here, Schedule 5 areas are those areas where there is a significant tribal population, but apart from those states like Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. This is what Schedule 5 areas. Now, what is so special about Schedule 5 areas? So first of all, again, I will give you one more difference, then I will discuss about it. What is so special about Schedule 5 areas is, Schedule 5 area speaks about something called tribal advisory councils. Schedule 5 areas, they have more powers actually. The governors are given more powers actually. But generally speaking, when you make a comparison, Schedule 5 areas have tribal advisory councils, whereas Schedule 6 areas, what they have autonomous, they've been provided autonomous district councils, district as well as regional councils. They have what? Autonomous district as well as regional councils. So TAC here it is ADC or autonomous regional councils. Autonomous regional council. This is what. Fine. Fine. So this is what. So the basic differences between Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 is Schedule 5 areas deal with tribal advisory councils and Schedule 6 deals with autonomous district councils. Compared to Schedule 5 and Schedule 6, Schedule 5 areas has less powers. So meaning what? Autonomous district councils has more powers. Autonomous district councils has more powers with respect to compared to the tribal advisory councils. Okay, we'll meet after a short break. So we'll meet after the break. All right. So in the meantime, like what are the slides you want? Like first you complete it, then you can let me know what are the slides. As far as the doubts is concerned, like I'll answer at the end. All right. Forest Dweller Act is 2000. It is 2006 people. Social impact assessment, what you given, Chandramohan? I did not see that. Guideline value and market value is different actually. Guideline value and market value is different because you see, in the case of market value, it is depending on those the past, you see, past year transactions. Based on that, like sometimes it may be more than guideline value, but mostly like people don't give the same thing, right? People always go with the guideline only, but guideline value, it's often keep on changing, right? That is what. PRI means this Panchayat Raj institutions. Fine. Customary mode of dispute resolution means that is what you see. They have their own customs and traditions based on which they kind of solve the problems. They have their own traditions and customs based on which they solve that. So that is what called as customary mode of dispute resolution. Fine. What you said is right only, Chandramohan. That is what social impact assessment is. Fine. Okay. So next one we are going to discuss so we are going to discuss about Schedule 5. Schedule 6 we'll discuss that in things. So this is what the basic differences are. So now we are going to deal about Schedule 5. So what exactly Schedule 5 does? What exactly does Schedule 5? Actually, Schedule 5, it gives more powers to governor actually. So governor has been given powers, say for instance, to annul means, like, you see, to cancel or to prevent the act from a legislation, to amend any law here. This law includes what? Both central government as well as state government. To annul or to amend any law that has an impact, annul or impact amend any law which has an impact or which is applicable to schedule areas. Why it is done basically? You see, because the reason or the object behind that is, I'll give you an example. So the object is to protect. To protect the tribals actually. To protect the tribals from the negative impact of such legislation. For instance, I'll give you examples related to, anything related to anything related to allotment and transfer of land. Any related to, say, money lending. Anything related to money lending. So related to these things, a lot of powers have been given. All right. So if any law, for instance, like a central government is making a law, say, like we can take the case of farmers law. So if that farmers law, right now it is not impacting. If that is impacting those tribals who are in the tribal areas, definitely that won't be applicable to these people unless and until the governor says yes. So normally every law which is made by the union, they'll say that, like, to what extent it is applicable. So before Jammu and Kashmir was under Article 370, you see most of the laws, except related to defense and other things, they were applicable to the whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. All right, so most of the central government laws, it will be applicable all throughout the country. But you see, in this case, even though if it is applicable, if at all the governor thinks that, if the governor of the state thinks that, like, if the specific law would affect the interest of the tribals, it would affect the rights of the tribals, then the governor can issue a notification that this law is won't be applicable to scheduled areas. This is what. So such powers are given to the governors. So governors were given powers to amend a law or to stop the law from applicable because they have to protect them. And they have been given additional responsibilities also. These are the additional responsibilities or the powers they're given. So powers related to making peace, all right, related to making allotment and transfer of land, or related to money laundering, money lending, I'm sorry, not money laundering, money lending. So all these things are kind of provided to governor. So basically governor has been given more powers. So every year he has to send a report also. He has to submit a report also. Every year he has to submit a report also. All right, so that report he has to submit it to the president based on the kind of things happening. Fine. So this is what about what are the powers given to governor under Schedule 5. So basically ultimate objective of Schedule 5 is to prevent the exploitation as well as to protect them. Now one more thing you have to know, that what about tribal advisory councils? So what are this tribal advisory councils? What is the composition? What is this? Tribal advisory councils. See, tribal advisory councils means it's a mere recommendatory body. It is mere a recommendatory body. So what it does is, so every scheduled area that is Schedule 5 areas, they are supposed to have a tribal advisory council. They basically advise the governor on so the tribal advisory councils, what is their duty? They basically, what they do, they advise, they provide advice, as the meaning advisory council. They advise governor with respect to what? Welfare of the people, the tribal people, I mean, the welfare of the tribal people as well as advancement. So it is about what? Welfare as well as advancement of tribals. What is given in the Article 46, right? This is what. So this is the first thing. Now if you look into the composition is, because there is a possibility they might ask this in prelims also, the composition is maximum 20 members, and out of this 20 members, 3/4 of the members should be the scheduled tribes of, better I write it as scheduled tribe MLAs. The scheduled tribe MLAs of the state. So meaning, so if Jharkhand has a tribal advisory council, means if they are comprising of 20 members, means out of this 20 members, 15 members should be what? The MLAs of the specific state, the scheduled tribe MLAs. All right. So the maximum is that. All right. The maximum is that. And the third is, whenever I speak about advice, so there should be mandatory consultation. So that should be mandatory consultation before a regulation is being passed. A regulation is approved. So if the governor wants to bring any such regulation or changes, or before framing a regulation, I mean, so they have to get the permission. They have to get the permission, not just permission in the sense like not the consent as such, consultation, I mean. Don't think it's consent, it's consultation. All right, it's consultation. Fine. So this is what. So just keep these things in mind. But unfortunately, you see the fifth schedule is not properly functioning, because you see in the case like when we discuss about the these are mentioned like 3/4, minimum 3/4 should be from the scheduled tribe MLAs, right? So depends on, some states have 10, some states have 12, let it be. But the thing is that the leaders, most of the head of the tribal advisory councils, they're non-tribals. You see the chief minister is becoming the head of the tribal advisory councils. There is the kind of conflict actually. There is a kind of conflict. If these people, the chief ministers or other people themselves be part of it, like how it is going to make a difference? The lawmakers are themselves part of tribal advisory councils. How it is going to make a difference then? Understand? This is what. So basically speaking, this Schedule 5, it is not so kind of giving powers to the tribal advisory councils as such equal to the schedule 6. Okay, so tomorrow, so for next class we'll discuss about that, the schedule, the comparison between tribal advisory councils and why the people in the schedule areas, the Naxal affected areas, why they want to move from schedule 5 to schedule 6, why they want more autonomous. We'll see in the next class after finishing of the Northeast insurgency. Fine. So this is what about the tribal advisory councils. Fine, people. So these are some of the things which you have to focus on specifically. All right, the general as well as specific provisions, and definitely schedule 6 is not related to that. Schedule 6 is not related to Naxalism. These are the one which are related to Naxalism. Fine. The next one we're going to discuss about. So we have discussed about the constitutional mechanisms, right? So the next with respect to governance, actually, so sorry, development measures, don't write development measures, but I'll tell you like what are the things you have to go for developmental measures. So in the case of developmental measures, please write down the following and then please go through that. I'll discuss this in next class. Next class in the sense after finishing Northeast. I said, no, we'll have a comparison because these are overlapping thing. But in the meantime, you can go through this. As far as the developmental mechanisms are concerned, or the developmental measures are concerned, you have to go through the following schemes actually. You have to go through the following schemes. Schemes like the minimum support price, the minimum support price for minor forest produce. So what is minor forest produce? All right, the minimum support price for minor forest produce. All these things you have to see before framing regulation. They have to be consulted. Before framing regulation, they have to be consulted. That is what I mean. Before framing regulation, they have to be consulted. All right, fine. So minor forest produce. This is one thing we have to find. You have to. I'll discuss definitely, but in the meantime, like you also please go through that. CAMPA, the Compensatory Afforestation Management Planning Authority. CAMPA fund, CAMPA authority. This is also. Next thing, TriFed, Tribal Cooperative Federation Marketing and Development Agency. TriFed. It's again one more important stuffs. District Mineral Fund, District Mineral Fund. This is very much specific to the Naxal related things. And also schemes like Vandan Yojana, and also there are other things. Follow these ministries and find out the schemes related to that. Like first of all, it is the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which is most important. So most of the schemes which are related to that, like you please find it out. This is one. Ministry of Skill Development, Ministry of Skill Development. So what are the schemes related to tribals, related to skill development? Home Affairs, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. All right. Ministry of Social Justice and Welfare. All right. Any initiatives of Niti Aayog? Understand? So consultation of it's binding on governor. Consultation is not binding. That is what the problem is. It's an advisory body only, right? So this is an advisory body. All right, fine. So these are some of the things which you have to focus on. All right. So Department, Ministry of Finance is there. Like you can mention about Ministry of Finance. All right. HRD. See, all these ministries have dedicated programs for the targeting tribals. On all those things, please go through. This is not helpful. I said not just in paper 3, it will be in paper 1, 2 also. Please go through that. But I'll discuss these things. I'll discuss these things definitely after completing insurgency, because there is a kind of lot of overlapping will be there. That is the reason why. Fine. And next coming to the governance. Okay, so next coming to the governance aspect. As far as the governance aspect, can I change it? Next coming to the governance aspect. So governance aspect, we're going to focus on the center state coordination as well as interstate coordination. All right. So first of all, the next one which we're going to see is governance aspect. See, governance aspect, first of all, there is a lack of coordination. There is what? A lack of coordination. Why there is lack of coordination? How that is going to impact that? See, lack of coordination, I speak about center state also. Lack of coordination, I'll speak about interstate, among the states also. Because Naxalism is not one issue which is kind of impacting one specific state. It's spanning across the central India, right? Fine. So first of all, you see why state is very much required, because state needs. So first of all, if you look into that, the state governments, they depend on the center. I given the example of the scheme, right? Security related expenditure scheme, SRE scheme, wherein the reimbursement for rehabilitation and resettlement or the surrender policy, it is kind of there. So the reason being that why state depends on it, because of the resources, because of the mostly the financial constraint. All right. So the state lacks the resources. That is the reason why. All right. So they lack the resources, and that is the reason why they depend on it. They depend on the center to it. But what happens generally? If both center and state has the same party, that is not a problem. If center has BJP, state has BJP, no problem. If center has Congress, state has Congress, no problem. But if one party in the center, one party in the state, as of right now in the case of Chhattisgarh, all right, so this causes a creative problem. You see, Chhattisgarh, one of the most affected. Till recently, the state was ruled by Chhattisgarh, that is by BJP. And it was before 2014, it was so much of an issue. See, there was always a blame game. All right. So between the center and state, there is differences. So between the center and the state, there is differences in the perception and attitude. So there is differences in perception and attitude. So when two different parties are ruling, there is so much of a differences in perception and attitude. So what is the impact of this? The impact of this is the dilution of accountability. The dilution of accountability. Meaning what? There used to be a blame game on the lapses. There used to be a blame game. Meaning what? So the central government will say that like the state is not coordinating. The state government will say that like center is not giving enough fund to us. You see, this happens everywhere. You see, every time, like you see, right now we have a BJP government. So all the non-BJP government, they say the center is not giving the proper thing. In terms of calamity, they say that like we demanded 10,000 crores. They're giving only meager 1,000 crores. And especially during the budget, they'll say that like you see, most of the non-BJP rule, they'll be getting it more, and they'll be saying that like we're happy. Non-BJP, they'll say that this is not enough for it. Even if they're enough, they'll say that like this has happened in the case of Congress also. The Congress versus non-Congress party. So every party that comes in, this is what happens. So, but this has an impact on the national security. This is what I mean. Like because of this one, so accountability gets diluted. Like you keep on, who is responsible? You know that. You don't know that. Center says that no, I give a mere assistance to them. They're not asking me. State says that they're asking, they're not giving in. So this problem happened. So governance aspect, first of all, there needs to be a cooperation between, coordination between center and state as well as among the states. Fine. This is what with respect to governance. And whenever I speak about governance, the other factor is you should be speaking about the basic necessities by providing. Take the case of PDS. Take the case of PDS. You see, one of the states which successfully implemented this targeted PDS system is Chhattisgarh, computerized. All right, that is one of the reasons to bring down Naxal related things. But you see that if the basic governance is delivered, meaning what? If good governance is delivered, good governance means what? Timely and efficient, targeting the audience. If this is delivered, give the basic necessities, minimum basic necessities, provide them the good timely governance. You have something called citizens charter and all, right? So whatever you promise, you have, not just in the manifesto. So do when they're demanding something, like do provide it on time, effective implementation of RTA also. So these are some of the factors which are kind of responsible to bring down, which can mitigate the Naxal effect. Understand now? Because governance is one of the factors, like provide them with proper governance, timely, ensure governance, good governance. This is one of the factors. All right. So this is all about the governance aspect. Next, speaking about the political one. Next is about the political one. What are the political measures or the political solutions? What are the political solutions? See, political solutions means, just imagine a situation, what if an ex-Naxal, if an ex-Naxalist surrenders, he wants to contest the elections. So ex-Naxal, he surrenders and he wants to contest election. So what about that? Would that be a right idea? Would that be a right idea to let him contest the elections? Or else it's kind of problematic. Do you think? What is your take on this? Why you allow them? Now, if it is kind of accused of key things, all right, that should be a cooling off period. All right, okay, fine, people. So how long it should be? Okay, let it be. But the thing is, yes, they come within the democratic process. That's what people said. Some not allow. Why not allow? You can say that, people. Why allow them after 5 years? If not allowed, it will be counterproductive to root out extremism. It's good idea as he knows their problems. All right, seems problematic, but ideally should be allowed. Very diplomatic answer. Okay, since because he is influenced by Naxal ideology, he should not be allowed. All right, so that is what you're saying that. But you see, I'll give you examples. We'll start specifically. I don't want to give examples Northeast, even Northeast also. India has a long history of imbibing the political history. We have an imbibing or absorbing the ex-Naxals or the ex-insurgents. All right. You see, by letting them contesting elections, there are three things. First of all, what he will do, he will contest the elections, number one. All right. So first of all, by letting him, okay, so there are some things. Okay, I'll come to that. We can't find out whether he's completely came out of Naxal thought or not. Okay, fine. Let it be. So first of all, by making him contest the elections, that is the first victory, is it not? Why? Because what exactly is the Naxal ideology? They don't believe in elections. They don't believe in democratic process. By making him believe that, like, okay, he can make a change or he can rule through democracy, that itself, we are destructing the ideology he had. Is it not? By making him participating, by contesting the elections, it is kind of first victory. Victory for the government, I mean. Victory for the people also. Now the second we have to think about, what if he wins the elections. Now there are two things actually. if he wins the elections, we'll get to know that whether he had the confidence of the people. You see, by this time, like there is an assumption that every Adivasi is a supporter of Naxal. Or generally, people in the Naxal say that like every Adivasi, we are for every Adivasi is supporting us. Now, if at all he has the support of all these Adivasis, definitely he'll be winning the elections, right? So here it is. If he wins the elections, that is also good because we can say that, okay, he had the support of the people. By winning, what is it? We are letting him to govern. By winning, he is part of the government, democratic process. He may become a minister also, or if he is in the opposition, he can bring in a lot of things, right? Bring the kind of grievances of the people to the assembly. So by contesting the first victory, by winning, if he is winning, fine. If he is losing, also it is a victory for the government because that people will be set aside. Third is letting him govern. Like now he'll get to know that, like, because these many days, who is not letting the development to happen? It is few people from the Maoists. They don't let it happen. Is it not? I said no. Maoist people, they got the money from the same people who are involved in mining, the same people who are who they are opposing. So the Naxal people, they oppose the mining. They don't do mining because it is affecting the Adivasis, but they let the mining happen by extorting money from those people. Especially it happened. I said no. The WikiLeaks it released such cable. They got money from SR Group, ESSAR Group. All right, fine. That is what. So by governing, it is a kind of, now again, two things can be proved. If he is able to deliver it, then it's good for both the people also, him also, the government also. If he's unable to deliver it, then he'll get to know that definitely he'll blame the Naxals, right? Yes, I want to do that, but the Naxals are not letting it happen. The other Naxals, the present Naxals, I mean. So in all three aspects, it's a benefit only, is it not? In all three aspects, that is beneficial only. So that is the reason why. So India has the kind of things like we had led the yesterday's. So it is basically, so India has a long political history of absorbing those things. So yesterday's insurgents, they become today's leaders. One such example I have to give with respect to Naxals. So there is a post called Sitaka. I guess SWL, because I got this spelling, Sitaka, right? She is from Andhra Pradesh. She's an MLA. Her name is Dhanasari Anasuya. Dhanasari Anasuya. All right. So what exactly is the meaning is, this is what the example I was. So here right now you have it in Andhra Pradesh. She is from Andhra Pradesh. So she is there for the Indian political system, Andhra Pradesh politics for almost 15 years. All right. So that's what, like, both the same persons only. Both are same persons only. So she is never referred to be Sitaka actually. Fine. This is what. So yesterday's insurgent has become today's leaders. Like, so they become MLAs, they become MPs and all. So especially in Northeast, in Northeast, people have become chief ministers also. In Northeast, Lal Denga. In Northeast, Lal Denga of Mizoram. I'll discuss that tomorrow, next class. Lal Denga of Mizoram. Then from Assam Gana Parishad, there is this person, Prafulla Kumar Mahanta. Prafulla Kumar Mahanta of Assam. Lal Denga of Mizoram. So these people have become chief ministers also. So extremist, separatist, they have turned to today's leaders. Fine. So this is what. So political solution is the best thing, because for those insurgents who wants to overthrow the government through violent manner, if they believe in democracy and they do that, that is the biggest success. That is the biggest success. Fine. That is what. All right. Fine. This is what. And the next one. And the next one which we're going to see is, the role of civil society. So what is the role of civil society? What is the role of civil society? Now, what is the role of civil society? Here, we got to speak about the role of several, say, NGOs or civil society organizations. Now, you see, these people are very much instrumental in bringing out the atrocities. Mostly, they'll cover that the atrocities of the security forces. But it is very difficult to differentiate who is a front organization. All right. You see, most often, you see, in the name of civil society, these front organizations used to be hidden. But the effect, like right now, we are speaking about the role. We are not speaking about these front organizations. But what they are supposed to do, they have to bring in the atrocities by the security forces. They have to bring in the atrocities of security forces with respect to Adivasis and Naxals, let it be. But apart from that, they should initiate talks. They should be a kind of what? They should be a perfect interlocutor. They should act as a mediator. They should act as what? A mediator, an interlocutor between the talks between the government and these people. Understand? Fine. So this is what? So this is the role of civil society. So civil society should be engaged in talks so as to reduce the friction between the Naxals. I don't know, Naxals, they don't believe in talks. But in fact, like, they should take efforts because they are supporting the cause of, so few people are indirectly supporting the cause of Naxals, right? So they should try to bring that, reduce the friction. Fine. This is what, so we have to follow that. Like, this is what the role of, you can say, civil societies. All right. So we'll stop with that. We'll stop with this with respect. So this is what with respect to Naxalism. All right. So again, some more things which is left out, I said, no, we'll be having a comparison. So further not wasting time, we'll see that, like, all right. So we'll see the next one. The next one, we'll see one more topic. This topic is with respect to Northeast insurgency. Any other doubts you have, people? Can we go to the next one? Any other doubts we have? Anything which you feel is left out? So current CM of Assam, Sarbananda Sonowal, I guess he's part of the student thing, but I don't think he is an extremist. He was not an insurgent. He was part of the students' union and all. Okay. Yes, whatever you said is right. Okay, fine. So people, can we go to the next topic then? Any of the doubts you have which you feel like you want to know it? Okay, she is from Telangana. Okay, fine. Maybe like okay, she's a MLA only. I know that, like, if she's from Telangana, I can rectify that. She's from Telangana. Fine. Can we go to the next one, people? Okay, so whether PESA was not applicable to Schedule 6? No, people. PESA is Schedule 5 areas only. Okay, you can ask it out at the end of the session. Okay, good, fine. Okay, let it be, fine, good. Okay, we'll start the next topic. The next topic is Northeast insurgency. The next topic is what? Northeast insurgency. See, as far as the Northeast insurgency, you are supposed to draw the map actually. You're supposed to draw the map, so please, you can just show that map and then you can start drawing it. So Northeast insurgency, just a minute, because map is very important, because every year prelims they used to ask something related to maps, especially in Northeast. Fine, just a minute, like. Fine, wait, I'll just put the map over here so that, like, you can see where did I keep this one. Third floor அந்த மினி ஹாலில் வந்து இது பென்ட்ரைவர் கிடைப்பாங்க இதில் டிஸ்பிளேல இருக்கும், டிஸ்பிளேல இருக்கும். So please draw this map, people. So please draw this map, outline the boundaries. Now, see, start with, so please start with Assam. Start with Assam first. This is the first thing you have to do. And then the other states. All right. Then the countries. So start with Assam, then the states, then the countries. Write the countries. And next it comes like, that's it. Like first the states here till that. West Bengal, till West Bengal you draw. And also Sikkim. Yeah. All right, please do draw that. Like in the meantime, like I'll take that. So if you have drawn the map, please do let me know, people. Start with Assam. So, have you completed, people? Have you? Everyone completed, people? Please do respond. So please do wind up, people. Like, sorry, complete soon, people. For those people who haven't completed, please do. Okay, I'll start sharing the map here. So the topic of insurgency in Northeast, you see that. So first of all, all right. So first of all, the agenda will be that. The agenda will be that, like, so we have to. So we have to first of all see the profile of Northeast. the profile of northeastern states, how they evolved and other things. So what exactly the geography and other things. And secondly, we'll see the problems of northeast in general. So what are the problems that are existing in that, the problems, the typology of conflict and other things. We'll see that what exactly is the issue, like so who and who are fighting, why they are fighting and all, like so we'll see that. And the third, we'll be looking into the state specific. So first of all, generally, then we'll be seeing state specific. So all these states starting from Nagaland, like all the states, what exactly is the issue, who, what they're fighting for, all those things, we'll see that. And fourth, we'll have measures to prevent or to mitigate, like no, not to prevent, at least to mitigate that. So this is what our agenda will be. So we'll start with the profile of the Northeast. So we're going to see the profile, we're going to see the problems in general and the state specific issues as well as the measures. So we'll start with the profile actually. All right. So here it is. You can say that, like, okay, better I don't want to go, we'll just refer the map alone. Rest apart, we'll see that data is here. The data is that, so first of all, looking into the profile of Northeast, looking into the profile of Northeast. Looking into the profile of Northeast, if you see that Northeastern states, they have what it's called as 7 sisters, right? 7 sisters, they became 8, is it not? 8 with the addition of Sikkim. So they became 8 with the addition of Sikkim. So looking into the demography of Northeast, if you look into that, you see they comprises of 8%. They comprises of approximate 8% of the total geographic area. 8% of the total geographic area. But they have less than 4%, an approximate 4% of the total population. In fact, it is 3.7 only. So in terms of approximate numbers, they comprises of 8% of the total geographic area and 4% of the total population. But the thing is that they are the most diverse. They are the most diverse. When I speak about most diverse, means they have more than 200 ethnic groups and languages. All right, they have what? 200 ethnic groups and languages. All right, they have 200 such groups and languages. Now we got to see the evolution of it. So if you look into the evolution, it is because of this diversity which is creating a trouble. All right, now we'll see that. You look into the profile of it. Look into the profile of it. So in the year 1951, at the time of independence, they had only these states. Like you see the Northeast, there was no Sikkim, there was only Assam, and what are the other 2 states? The other 2 states are this is Assam. They are not just the states, as well as they are given some special union territory status also. This is not Nagaland, this is Manipur. People do make a mistake. This is not Nagaland, this is Manipur, and this is what? Tripura. So at the time of independence, At the time of independence, these are the states. So soon after independence, I'm saying not exactly 1947. By 1951, even before the reorganization of states, they were part of it. Understand? All right. So right at the time of independence only, Manipur became a separate entity as a part of India. I mean, not as independent. And the next major event happens in the year 1963. 1963, the significant is this part, Nagaland. Nagaland becomes a separate state. By 1963, what? Nagaland becomes a separate state. This is very important. Why? Because again, there might be factual questions. They might ask in prelims, but they are asking in the interview also. So if you are from Northeast, like you need to know that. All right, but still, like it's very important. We'll see the history of Nagaland also. Nagaland was given statehood in the year 1963. So there was no linguistic reorganization, unlike what happened in the northern part of India and southern part of India. There was no such linguistic reorganization of states. Reorganization based on language, but here it is more based on ethnicity only. We'll see that. And the next major event happened, you can say, in the year 1972. In 1972, what happened? Meghalaya becoming a separate entity. Mizoram becoming a separate entity. And Arunachal. So, Arunachal, Mizoram, and Meghalaya, they became a separate entity. All right. And the next major event happened in the year 1975. Wherein Sikkim becomes part of Indian Union. Because until 1975, Sikkim was India's protectorate. Sikkim was India's protectorate. So what is the meaning of India's protectorate means? So it's one less than independent, complete independent. So it's independent, still protectorate, meaning one step less than independent, you can say that. Meaning what? We should be, in case of any external aggression, we'll be protecting them. They'll be having autonomy, but we'll be protecting them. Understand? But they are not part, like they have their own constitution, but don't compare that with say Jammu and Kashmir or any of other things. It's very specific status. So special status was given, and later on what? They became state also. So first special status was given, later on soon they given specific statehood also. This is what. So this is a picture by 1987. So by 1987, those who are, say, union territories, they were given statehood. The northeastern things. So don't go by the numbers here, like it's not actually exactly correct. This is for the map purpose I have taken. So those which were having union territory status, say Arunachal Pradesh and other things like Mizoram and all, they were provided what? With statehood. So by 1987, the present position, the geographical division, the state reorganization, everything happened. Understand? So the present position you can date from 1987. Now, why these things are necessary? Because why I am speaking about these things? Because why I am speaking these things? Because you see, the insurgency started. Because the insurgency started in Nagaland at the time of independence. The insurgency started in Nagaland at the time of or even before independence. Started even before Indian independence. And it is still surviving. The important thing is what? It is still surviving. This insurgency is still surviving. Rightly, we call the Naga insurgency as the hotspot, of Northeast insurgency. So the other insurgency movements also, separatist movements, basically they are separatist movements. The other insurgency movements also started later on. The other insurgency movements also started later on. Understand? The other insurgency movements also started on later. But I'll just again go back to the map passage. Here, if you look into that, look into the map. If we make a comparison, no need to write, people, just see. If we make a comparison between, say, Naxalism versus Northeast, if we make a comparison between, say, Naxalism and Northeast, these are the things you have to keep in mind. In Naxalism, it is only CPI Maoist versus the government of India. CPI versus government of India includes the government of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, etc. So on one hand, you have only one player, that is CPI Maoist, the only enemy of the state. But in the case of Northeast, there are so many insurgent groups. Look at here examples. If you want also, you can write, don't worry, nothing is there. Like these are some of the organizations which are banned in Northeast under the unlawful activities. You know about unlawful activities, right? So in India, the organizations are banned under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. Now take the state of Assam. Assam has 3 different organizations. For instance, ULFA. Sorry, what's happening? Assam has ULFA. ULFA is demanding for a separate country. They want what? A separate country. ULFA wants a separate country. I better write this in. ULFA wants a separate country. They want a separate state, Bodoland. Bodo, the NDFP, National Democratic Front of Bodoland, which is also part of Assam. They want a separate state which is called as Bodoland. Kamtapur also, they want a separate organization, separate state for Kamtapur people. All right. So within one state, different organizations, different demand. So they are fighting against the state. State in a sense like the union government and the central state government. Take the case of Manipur. Most of them almost same thing only. All right. So mostly there is in Manipur what? There is again few sections who are demanding for separate country, and few sections who are demanding for a separate state, like few people like the Nagas. The Naga people wanted some part of Manipur to be part of Nagaland. On the other hand, there is again Kuki people who want a separate Kuki land. The Meiteis who want to separate country, separate Manipur as a separate country. So mostly they have the same thing, right? So again, take the case of Nagaland. Again, I'll give you one more example. Nagaland. All these people, NSC and K, NSC and IM, they want, all they demand is what? Greater Nagaland. All of them demand Greater Nagaland. Here in Meghalaya also different parties. One, the Garo, Kasi, Jaintia. Garo people wanted a separate Garo state. Understand? So the interesting thing about Nagaland is, all these organizations are demanding separate country called as Greater Nagaland. One state, different organizations, different demands. One for separate country, separate state. One state, so many organizations, few organizations, same demand. Other organizations, different demand. Meghalaya, the same thing. Nagaland, all organizations demand the same thing, but different names, different functions. Such is the complication of Northeast. Such is the complication of Northeast. Understand? This is what the complication of these things. All these groups are banned actually. We'll discuss when we discuss about specific states. I'll definitely include. I'll say all these things. Now the important thing is, why there is a lot of problem. One more problem is also there. In the case of Northeast, you see, we have seen the case of Indo-Myanmar, right? In the case of Indo-Myanmar, what we have seen, the bifurcation or the demarcation is more based on geography than based on the tribes. We have seen that, right? We call it as an artificial line. Similarly, here is also. You see people, the cookies are present in Manipur also. Cookies are present in Assam also. Cookies are present in Tripura also. Nagas, they are present in Manipur also. Nagas are present in Meghalaya, sorry, in Assam also. Nagas are present in Arunachal also. Nagas are present in Myanmar also. So this is what happens. So because of this complication, wherein a specific ethnic group, they are kind of living in a neighboring adjacent state, that is also problematic. So it is very much important for you to understand what exactly is the conflict. What are the conflicts which are there? So please write down the typology of conflicts. Please write down the typology of conflicts. Please write down about the typology of conflicts. All right. So you have three set of things. All right. So you have something called national conflict. You have something called ethnic conflict. You have something called sub-regional conflicts. All right. Fine. So here it is. The conflict, it is national conflict, means where there is a demand for a separate country. A demand for a separate country. Example. See, whenever you give examples, don't say that the people of Assam want to separate Assam, or people of Nagaland, they want to separate Nagaland. Don't say that. Always speak about the organizations, because when you mean that the people means the entire thing, it's not the case. Fine. So that is the reason why we call them the specific organization. They are demanding a separate country. Example, NSCNK faction, Kaplang, KHAPLANG, NSCNK faction, they want what? Greater Nagaland. They want what? Greater Nagaland. Ulfa want a separate country for Assamese people. They want to separate Assam from India. This is what national conflict. So they basically want a separate country. Ethnic conflicts, here it is. Ethnic conflicts, you see, it is between two ethnic groups. All right. You have the problem between the Meiteis versus Nagas. All right. This is one classic example. The Meiteis versus things. So one tribal group fighting with another tribal group. One tribal group fighting with another tribal group. Or sometimes it may result in, you see, the ethnic conflicts can result in. The ethnic conflicts can result So it is not kind of basically. So it may result in the demand of separate. It may result in the demand of separate things. So for instance, Garo Liberation Army. Garo Liberation Army. They demand for a separate state for Garo people. They demand a separate state. So ethnic conflict can lead to a demand for a separate state. They're not kind of asking for a separate country or something like that, because it's predominantly not a fight against it is not predominantly a fight against the state. It is basically fight against those people again. Whereas the case of sub-regional conflicts, again, you can say it is not more about, say, a specific country or a state. It's mostly basically for more autonomous. All right, so they might not ask for a separate state. They might not ask for a separate country, but they'll be dealing with it. They'll be fighting with autonomous district councils or the state government to want more autonomy. They want to remain within the state, they want to remain within the country, but they want more powers. This is what. Understand? National conflicts demand for a separate country. Ethnic conflicts, it is between ethnicity, but may expect for a separate state. Here it is sub-regional conflicts. They need not. All right. Fine. So this is what. So there is a group called this Mars group. This is there present in Tripura. This is that present in Tripura. They demand a separate some more autonomous thing. But apart from that, if you look into the typology, this is what basically on the base of demand. This is what on the base of demand. But if you look into the people who are involved in it, so we have seen this is based on the demand actually. But if you look into the who are those people, what is their fighting for? The fighting is between the tribals versus the government, that is the state government as well as central government. It is the tribal versus the outsiders. Outsiders means whom? The illegal migrants or those people even within India who are settling there. We have seen the case of Bodos, right? Or it may be the tribal versus the tribals. Understand? So on the basis of the persons involved, on the basis of the people involved, it may be a tribal versus tribal, it may be a tribal versus outsider, it may be a tribal versus the state. So hope you get to know the complications involved. So based on the demand, it may be a national, ethnic or sub-regional conflicts. Based on the players involved, it may be these three people. Right? So we'll wind up with these people. Like so, I'm not kind of feeling well, so that is the reason why. So I'm not well today. So I have some sort of I'm not able to give 100% efficiency today, but I hope still, despite that fact, like I was able to deliver properly. I hope. All right, fine. So I'll answer your doubts, people, and I hope like the class was good today also. Fine. So I'll answer your doubts, Aramze. Fine. I'll sit and answer, people. All right. So you can ask your doubts. You can please copy and send me your doubts also again. Fine. So please. Okay. So see one by one. Didn't the land reforms give back to poor farmers who are exploited by zamindari system? See, land reforms, I said it wasn't failure only, right, people? I said no, land reforms was a failure. So they actually, it's not that today you have a lot of landless people also, right? So you can't say that like zamindari system is, even though zamindari system is abolished, no such like land revenue system, but still lands is constantly in the hands of you, and especially if you look into that perspective of, say, fragmentation of land. India has resulted in a lot of fragmentation of land also. I guess you'll study that in society maybe. So, or agriculture also, you'll study that. All right. So definitely India land reforms is a failure. So that is one thing. Like, could you please repeat what happened in 1987? 1987, what happened? Whatever the union territories, they were elevated to state. So union territory is more central government control, right? So for instance, Mizoram was a union territory. It was given status of statehood. Similarly, Arunachal, Northeast Frontier Organization agency, it was given to that. Understand me? Actually, that is what in 1987 the present day position. So present day the the status, no, the status as well as geography, it was given in 1987. All right. Um, Explain on Forest Rights Act. See, Forest Rights Act, I said no. Those people who are in the forest, here they're mentioning about two persons. One is the scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. These people were living in forest for generations. But you see, in forest, they don't have ownership, individual ownership. They have collective ownership, community ownership. So since they have collective ownership, when they are driven out of forest because of, say, Forest Act, because of Wildlife Protection Act, they won't be given compensation, right? So that is the reason why FRA was basically giving those rights. That is what I said, like it is allotment of title deeds. If they are kind of moved out of their forest, they'll be given compensation. Understand? So it is basically for those people who don't have land records. So it is basically to regularize them. Understood? Understood, Kishore? Okay, sir, as shown in Newton movie, whether security forces also exploit tribals as like Naxals. That is what I said, no? Insensitive administration. We discussed, I showed that picture, right? So suspect these people, they suspect everyone to be Naxals. Every Adivasi to be Naxals. At the same time, Naxals also. There are two sides. So in Newton movie, they would have showed that like, okay, kind of like security forces are kind of winding up as if they have come and voted. That also happens. We can't completely rule out that everyone is kind of good. All right. Fine. Okay, fine. Next is Asha is asking, sir, can you explain the tribal alienation reduction part under development related issues? See, I mean, you're asking, I guess you're asking about that one, like about PESA actually, right? Is it not? So under PESA, what happens? So PESA is targeting the alienation. So already you said no. In areas where PESA means it is applicable to Schedule 5 areas. In Schedule 5 areas, Gram Sabhas are given more powers. So why land alienation happens in the forest areas? Mostly because of mining, is it not? Mostly because of mining related things. So before giving the land to mining, we have to get the permission of Gram Sabha. So indirectly what it is doing, it is reducing the land alienation, meaning what? Further eviction of these tribals from land. That is what. Land alienation means what? The tribals are evicted from the forest. That is what. So by PESA, first of all, getting the permission is necessary, right? So by this clause, you are kind of reduction land alienation. Fine. So hope people. So in the Newton movie, people are not even aware of this political rights and they're forced to vote. Is this happened in real life? You know, it's happening. How many of you like most of the first time voters, they used to go out of enthusiasm only. Whether they know whom to vote, what to not, whom to vote, like they don't know that, right? So sometimes shown in movies, right, partly fiction only. But that is like it's not just it doesn't apply just not to the Naxals actually. Most of them. How many of you are aware of the political rights you have first of all? All right. So that thing it's there. All right, fine. Anything else, people? Anything else, people? Shall we wind up then? Sorry for one more minute. Okay. How autonomous district council is different from advisory council? So that I'll discuss tomorrow. So next class, because I said basically advisory councils means um, basically they'll give advice only. Autonomous district councils, they have more powers. Autonomous district councils, they have more powers basically. That is what the differences are. I'll tell you more differences basically. So the word autonomous, more powers. Advisory, mere advisory body. That is what. Okay. Okay. So please explain retrospective action. See, retrospective means there is two words: prospective, retrospective. Normally, a law will apply from the date in which it comes. That is called as prospective. All right. If the law comes this year, 2013, from that year only it will be applicable. That is called as prospective. Retrospective means what about the date in which prior things? For instance, land acquisition happened in 2008, but no proper compensation given. Will the previous Land Acquisition Act of 1894 applies, or the 2013 Act applies? Means, with respect to that case, 2013 law will apply. Because the issue is pending for 5 years, right? That is what called as retrospectiveness. Understood, Prashant? Or else like you can ask me still also. Sir, are those functions you discussed under PESA comes under the 29 functionaries or those extra powers? It is kind of amalgamation only. All those things, like I said, no, it's kind of amalgamation of all those powers only, not specific things. It's already given. All right, whatever already there in that other 29 only, that is gay. All right. Okay, again retrospective, fine. Retrospective and prospective means from the today's date it will be applied. The law will apply from today, the date on which. Retrospective means previous things. That is what the differences are. Retrospective means the law will apply from a prior date. Prospective means from that date. That is what. Just that it is mandatory for that's mandatory. That 29 functions are mandatory. That is what. That 29 functions which are mentioned, that is mandatory. That's very true. Okay, fine. Anything else, people? All right, take care. So have a great weekend. Enjoy. All right. See you next class then.